Well, hello and welcome. Happy Saturday, Empower Living community. I am stoked. I am so excited to bring to you my friend, my mentor, my coach. I always say that Paul Scheele has been with me for the last $500 million in my life. He's been my thinking partner. He has been my psychiatrist, my psychologist. He's been my counselor, but he's been my friend and teacher. And I am so happy to bring him to you. As a matter of fact, this week we should actually be covering organized planning. That's what would be the next chapter in the book. But one of the things you'll learn about me as an entrepreneur, as a thinker, and I think really successful entrepreneurs do this, is they have a plan that they've thought out that is great, but when something better can come in, you do it. And when I had an opportunity, I knew that we had a small window where I could get and bring to you Paul Scheele. I said, we've got to do it because there's nobody better that I could think of on the planet who could talk about these 3 chapters of the book. So we're going to cover 3 chapters of the book today. We're going to cover the brain, we're going to cover the subconscious mind, and we're going to cover the chapter on the 6th sense. And we're not going to do them in order, and we're probably not even going to reference the book, okay? We're going to reference the body of knowledge. Paul has committed his life to understanding why we do what we do and why we don't do some of the very things that we would love to do, and helping people understand that there are, as he says in this book, he says there's deep reservoirs of skill, talent, and ability within every single one of us. But for most people, we just don't know how to access those resources. There is nobody better on the planet to help you understand how to access the resources within you, the resources that he talks about in this book, the resource of persistence, of imagination, of intuition, of developing a burning desire, of the resource of autosuggestion in Paul Scheele. So Paul, thank you so much for saying yes, and welcome. You are a friend to the Empower Living community. We love you. Thank you.
I really appreciate the invitation. Of course, you know, these are the favorite subjects of my last 45 years of being in the business of improving our lives and realizing the fullest potential that's within us. So thanks so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be with you, Paul, as always.
Well, thank you. One of the things I love to do is I share that when you're navigating your life from here to there are things you need to learn and there are things that you need to do. But equally as important as who you learn from matters. So would you just share with the audience, give us just the Reader's Digest of somebody who may be tuning in and may be introduced to you for the first time. Why should they be listening to you? Kind of brag a little bit about yourself, about your body of knowledge and how you've come to be where you are now in the world as truly a recognized world leader on the topic of peak performance, human potential, the development of understanding the connection between mind and body and spirit.
Well, thanks very much. You know, I'm not one to brag on myself, so I'll let you do most of the bragging. I'll just say that from a humble beginning of wanting to understand how this thing called the mind actually works, because for me, growing up, it was a source of suffering. It was, I was tense, I was upset, I doubted myself. I found myself really kind of a nervous kid. And it wasn't something that I felt I could get under control. So I wanted to know, how do people come to that place of peace within themselves? As I grew up, I realized there are people that are doing this. There are some folks that have really learned to master the mind. And I had the opportunity, when my mom was a realtor and I was in high school, to listen to a set of audio cassettes. Remember when we had cassette tapes? The audio cassettes that were self-hypnosis for salesmen. And I thought, well, okay. And they did a progressive relaxation exercise. And I thought, that's it. That's a state that I'm looking for. Now, who does that all the time? And I started thinking about yogis who put their legs into pretzels and could sit for hours and be in total bliss. I said, I'm going to study yoga. And I found a community education program, and it was hatha yoga. It was postures and all that. But at the end, they did a relaxation. And it was blissful. I got to the university and I met a master of meditation, a Sanskrit scholar, a professor of foreign languages, who was teacher of the year. And as a child at age 9, he was lecturing to 10,000 people on the ancient texts of Sanskrit. And I mean, this man was amazing, and he taught a program on superconscious meditation. And I have to tell you, Paul, these chapters that we're looking at in Think and Grow Rich are absolutely right there, because there I was, 18 years old, experiencing superconscious meditation for the very first time. And I went someplace into total bliss. And he said, before you open your eyes, I want you to just think, how long was that? I thought, 10, 15 minutes, maybe. 40 minutes had gone by. And Paul, I wasn't asleep. I wasn't loggy. You know how you get sometimes when you do relax? No, I was fully attentive, but I was somewhere connected to the infinite. And this is what Napoleon Hill is trying to get us to understand. He talks about meditation, but he doesn't say have a meditation practice. He says you should all meditate. Well, why? Because here we've got this immense power. And who's controlling this? Who's driving the bus, right? And it's plowing down the road, creating all kinds of havoc for us. And if we don't learn to rein it in, and that's what yoga, it literally means yoke. If we don't wear the yoke, this powerful ox, this amazing subconscious mind of ours is going to run all over us. That's what I started to study when I was at the university. I got a call from my mom, says, hey, hon, you want to learn to become a hypnotist this weekend? I said, what? What are you talking about? And the oldest established hypnosis practice in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, the woman who started it was teaching a couple of doctors from Michigan how to use hypnosis in surgery. And she needed to fill out the class. I got an invitation, and that was the game changer. She said, Paul, I want you to work for me and with me. She had been diagnosed with an inoperable liver cancer and was supposed to be dead in 2 months. It was 5 years after that prognosis. I mean, it was an amazing thing, Paul. So when you start to realize some of these very fortunate opportunities that present themselves are absolutely in alignment with our deep desire. And that's why every one of you that are here on this program right now watching it, you're here because there's a deep desire, because your subconscious mind brought you here, because this is an opportunity to take the next step that's going to get you to the goals that you want. There is no accident here. Subconscious mind and the infinite intelligence, what I call I squared, II, infinite intelligence. The I squared, the infinite intelligence is always, that's your soul self. It's always putting in front of you the exact right next step that you need to take. And really, that was the beginning of my life. I think from pretty humble start, but the opportunities, my programs are in 185 countries, Paul, translated into so many languages. I've had the good privilege of teaching all over the world. My courses have been taught in 43 different countries. It's really something what can happen when we have a burning desire and we learn to direct this power of our mind for the purpose of realizing the fullest potential that's within us.
That's so powerful. And you know, what I love about you also is during that whole journey, you've been an entrepreneur. So you understand the struggle, the heartache, the pain, the despair, the hope, the cheering at times that we get. You understand that whole emotional roller coaster as well, don't you?
Well, it's not just emotional, it's feast and famine sometimes. I mean, you could be delivering on a project you finally sold and now you got it out there and you're on the rise and it's great. Oh, but guess what? Nobody's selling the next program. And so all of a sudden, right? So there's a lot of roller coasters that happen. And what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to smooth those out with a calm center that's within us and directed firmly, fixed and persistent on that true North Star that is our guidepost. And the way I like to talk about it, Paul, I think that all of us realize there's the next tsunami is coming any moment now. Right before the pandemic hit, I was saying, yeah, this problem is just the tsunami du jour. Pandemic hit. Whoa, right? And then the social unrest within the country, right? Oh, the next tsunami. Oh my goodness. Well, let's face it. It's the tsunami du jour. It's just the next big wave that's hitting us. We have to get on our surfboards and we have to steer our surfboards because we cannot control the wave. We have to control what's right underneath our own feet. And that's the power of the mind. That's the subconscious. That's our connection to the sixth sense. You know, when this big tsunami hit in Thailand, what happened was all of the indigenous cultures ran for the hills. All of the birds, all the animals, they all ran to the mountains. They knew ahead of time that the tsunami was coming. And all the modern vacationers are looking, oh, gee, I wonder why there's no water here. Oh, look at all the fish flopping. Let's go out on the beach and pick up fish. No. Run for the hills, right? The tsunami's coming. And so we have to be attuned. And when we are, our sixth sense is always going to say, get ready, because here comes the big one. Is it a challenge? Yes. Is there an opportunity? Absolutely. Be ready for it.
Yeah, and I think as entrepreneurs, when we have a community of practice like we do here with Empowered Living, and we have an individual practice as you work with students all over the world, we develop a level of discernment. And we begin to know that voice of the sixth sense. And I think that's probably in understanding the sixth sense, I think that's probably the biggest gap for most people, is understanding when that voice is communicating to you, how it communicates to you, because it does uniquely for each of us, doesn't it?
Yes. And I love the way you said voice, because it may be a voice, it might be a flash of an image, it might be a gut feeling, but however it comes to you, there's something discernible that is unique to that infinite intelligence starting to do the download, starting to guide you. And the way I like to talk about it, this is biblical when they say the still small voice within. And I think voice is a good way of thinking about it. When I'm getting a download from my infinite intelligence, there is a qualitative difference in the sound of the voice. It's resonant, it's expansive, it's super calm, it's super direct, and it speaks in truth that just goes right into my heart. And I can tell when I'm imagining what I need to do and what's the next thing I have to accomplish, and when I'm setting my goals and all that sort of, there's kind of a different energy to it. There's an urgency or an importance to it. And infinite intelligence is just super clear. So what we need to be able to do is quiet our mind enough that we can then tune into those feelings if they're at the level of the gut, or those pictures if they're at the level of imagery, or if it's that voice. Be quiet, be still, listen within. And that's where the practice of meditation or quieting the mind is. And this is something else Napoleon Hill describes. I don't know that he understood the science behind this, but he talks about these 2 times every day, just before you go to sleep, and just when you're waking up. Well, why is that? Cognitive science has shown that these 2 states, what researchers call the twilight state, it's when you're not fully awake, but you're not quite asleep yet. When you're going to sleep, and also when you're awakening, your body is totally still, your mind is absolutely quiet, you're preparing to open your eyes for the day. There is a stillness, a natural stillness, a natural quietude, where there's a very important distinction. The noise of our lives and the signal of the infinite intelligence are in the proper ratio. The noise is reduced and the signal is increased. And when we can shift that signal to noise ratio, which naturally happens 2 times a day, we're going to be more attuned to the real power of our subconscious mind, which, as Napoleon Hill says, is kind of the receiver, right? It's the receiver. And the creative imagination, which is the sender. What happens is infinite intelligence speaks into us, and we live into what it is we are becoming present to. I love the new research that's going on about how our biggest job as entrepreneurs, Paul, is that we have to become a landing strip for the future that's trying to emerge. And if you think about it, when did Napoleon Hill do this work? Just before the Great Depression. And when he got through the Depression, he says, what a blessing, because it really helped us see the power of mass fear that can control humanity and absolutely decimate economic structures of the world. Yeah. Pandemic did the same thing. And yet here you and I stand, and here all of you who are paying attention to this, learning from this, are recognizing it's time that you really recognize we're in an amplifier that's making every single decision we make that much more critical. Every thought that we think, is it worry? Is it fear? Or is it focus? Is it desire? Is it persistence in the direction that we have determined we're going in?
What I love about what you've done for myself and you do for countless others as entrepreneurs, and I would ask my team ambassadors now, if you could, in the comment section below, if you could put a link to Paul's program, 3 Dirty Secrets, just put a link there, because for all of you who are watching this, if you want to really take this and really understand this and learn how to apply this in your life, you're going to want to sign up for this course. But at one level, we can look at this from a spectator, and we can look at this, and this is fascinating stuff. It's interesting, but what we want to do is we want to make it useful. We want to be able to apply it in our life. And you said something before we started is that Napoleon Hill says it's not just that it's interesting or useful or that we can apply it. It's essential for us as entrepreneurs, isn't it?
Well, if you listen to the tone of his voice, and you can hear a quality of voice, there's an urgency, there's an insistence. He's saying, look, get this straight. I have a coach of my life named Arnold Patton, wrote a book years ago. He was on Oprah Winfrey when Oprah was still coming into being, right? It was called You Can Have It All. And one of the things he said in his live event seminars was, look, you have to master the basics. What are those basics? Desire, right? You have to master your desires. Faith, you have to master it. Self-talk, or what Napoleon Hill calls autosuggestion. If you don't master those, then every worry that you have amplifies and comes about. I have a minister at the church I go to that says, if you pray, don't worry. And if you worry, don't pray. Because look, what are you doing when you're worrying? You're putting into this infinite power of the universe an image, a feeling, a set of words that are exactly what you don't want to have happen. And if you don't cut it out, if you don't let that go and move on, start focusing on what has to happen, then what you're doomed to do, doomed. This is the point that Napoleon Hill makes. It's essential you get this right. You have to master your desires. Keep those as a central focus or the chief aim of your life, so that your thoughts, your prayer without ceasing, right? Your thoughts are your prayer without ceasing. That what you recognize is this is what brings about the results you're experiencing in your life. Just look about your life, and I will guarantee you, you will see the result of every thought you've ever thought. This is the manifestation. If you want to change, you have to start there. Change the thought forms that you are habitually managing in your mind.
I think Napoleon Hill had it right in making these 3 separate chapters, because there is a distinction between the brain, the subconscious mind, and this sixth sense or intuition. Will you share with the audience your understanding of what each of these purposes are and how as entrepreneurs we might better use them.
Yeah. So let's talk about the physical structure of the brain, because it's very important for us to understand the brain is biology. It is ancient. It grew as the human genome grew. So what we're locked into is this bicameral brain, two hemispheres, very much at opposition with each other quite often. The rational part of the brain and the creative part of the brain, part of you that sets a goal and really wants to achieve it, and part of you that's looking for the next shiny object that's wandering by. So the idea is we're locked into a biology, and you've heard the idea of fight, flight, or freeze when we're under stress. So let's break this down, because this also maps to what Napoleon Hill is trying to help us understand about how do we get to these higher powers of the infinite intelligence and the sixth sense. Because what we know now is that it's the prefrontal cortex that is that place where researchers call it the God spot. It's that part where there's a synchronous neural wiring. There's a connective neurology there that simultaneously communicates to every cell of your body instantly. Can't even account for the transmission of an electrical impulse. I'm telling you, it's instantaneous and simultaneous all over the body. This is a part of the brain that is just starting to light up for humanity. And so back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a lot of awakening going. The American Transcendentalist movement, people like Napoleon Hill and others that grew up with these kinds of thoughts of Emerson and Thoreau, and the people who are really studying powers of mind, William James, right? All of these folks that really created the field of psychology that didn't exist before then. You see, they started to recognize there are powers we have access to, but how do we do it? The Rhine experiments that Napoleon Hill talks about, telepathy and clairvoyance. We have clairaudience, clairsentience, which is feeling, clairvoyance, which is seeing, right? So we have these powers that are built into us, but we have to light up. We have to send and metabolize energy in that front part of the brain. Problem is, you're under stress, you downregulate. So the ancient part of the brain, most ancient, called the reptilian complex, when it's under stress, it's called freeze. And what happens is we get a new opportunity and we start to doubt what bad thing could happen. We freeze. And all of a sudden the opportunity goes to somebody else who's ready for it, right? And this is why it's so important that we get this right as entrepreneurs. We have to be able to act when it's appropriate to act, to hold up when it's appropriate to hold up. But most of our fears are mythical fears. And most of our hesitations are based on mistaken judgments about who we really are. But here's this reptile brain, this reptilian complex is the oldest part that goes into a freeze response. The next part up, which wraps around the reptilian, is the mammalian brain, or the limbic system. This is the emotional part. And it's also very important, the part where emotion begins to drive our desires. Remember how he talks about how important it is that the thoughts and our affirmations, our auto-suggestions, are empowered with emotionality, right? Well, guess what? If your emotional brain is in a fight or flight response, game's over, right? You can't move from there because it's a lockdown. It's going into a lockdown mode. This is dangerous. I either got to start fighting for my life because my life's in danger, COVID's happening, my life's in danger, or it's going to be run away, get out of here, leave the country, something. And I don't want to mislead. COVID has been a serious tragedy for the world. It really has. So many dear ones have been lost. I just need to say the human species went through this, and it's important that we come through on the other side stronger, more capable for it. And those who are leaning into it and recognizing, what can I do? I know I can't do all these things I'm used to. What can I do? How can I direct my energies? How can I grow my business in this situation? How can I send love and support to those that really need me right now? So you understand the importance of that emotional brain, that limbic system. Now, right covering that is the neocortex, the new brain with the left and right hemispheres. Now, this helps us see creative solutions to daunting problems. This is the communication has to be able to flow between these two parts of the brain. And right there is where I think Napoleon Hill's work is helping us understand the human brain looks like an antenna array with all the nerves going to all the parts. This is an antenna. It sends and it receives, right? So we have to get that we're constantly receiving and we're constantly sending. Now, once we are moving through these levels and see that there's a balance, there's a harmony, there's a communication, I'm bringing this power under control of my own will. I have an open mind, an open heart, an open will, strong desire. I trust, I have faith, I trust, and I surrender that my actions today are for the highest good for all concerned. And when you get there, now you've opened up this portal to the infinite intelligence, the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And what we know is the longitudinal studies of meditators is that this part of the brain actually grows in response to meditation. If you're not a meditator and you hear about the reports of meditation, you go, yeah, I don't get it. I close my eyes, I try to meditate. It's just a mess in there. Yeah, it is for all of us. But learning to bring the mind under control is an essential part of getting that clear signal of that higher consciousness that's trying to awaken us to what's the next step for us.
That is brilliant. Again, everybody, we are with Dr. Paul Scheele. In the comment section below, there's a link to a phenomenal course Paul has created, a special discount for those of you who are going through this TAGR entrepreneur's journey. Trust me when I say there's nobody I could better recommend than, and a study that I could recommend than this one. Click on the link below. So Paul, we understand that the brain is this physical structure. Now, the subconscious mind, as I've heard people talk about it, is actually the movement of the energy of the brain. Speak to us about the role that the subconscious mind has in relationship to not only the brain, but also how we then create our lives.
Good. I like to think about the subconscious mind as a goal-seeking mechanism. So this is why when Napoleon Hill talks about it, he's showing that the physical brain and the subconscious mind are linked inextricably. And at the time of his writing this, there wasn't a really good description of what this subconscious mind is about. And I like to think about it in the context of what a colleague of mine referred to R2D2. He called the subconscious mind "Are you me too?" and it's the idea that it's kind of a reactive robot. But if we have a thought and we give it to the subconscious mind, or the subconscious mind is always processing it, it just takes it as gospel truth and it starts acting on it. So if you say, I don't have any time. Okay, I'm on it. I'll make sure you don't have any time. I just don't think that I have the power to do this. Okay, I'm going to find lots of evidence to prove that that's true, right?
Nobody will buy this program.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay, exactly. So it's are you me too? So it's this reactive robot. I like to think about reactive robot as R2, right? And the infinite intelligence is I2. So if you think about how do these work together, the subconscious mind, once it is in alignment and congruently operating for you on behalf of your earnest desires, then that is the link to the superconscious. That's the link to the infinite intelligence. So we have a conscious mind, pretty small in terms of what it's able to do. The database of the conscious mind is outweighed by the database of the subconscious. It's estimated 10 billion to 1. Paul, that's a difference between a circle about 15 inches around that you could put under your feet right here and a circle 11 miles across. The database of your non-conscious mind is so vast, and it's filled with a lot of information that's either going to support you in getting what you want or support you in all of the negative thinking that you're maintaining on an ongoing basis. So it doesn't argue with you. You give yourself a negative thought, a worry, you mentally rehearse the worst case scenario. It's on it. I'll show you. And it will run through the universe, Paul. This is the important thing. Gathering validation for the thoughts that you hold until one day you decide to say, is that thought true? I mean, I've been holding it all my life. I'm no good. I can't learn. I'll never make enough money. I can't support myself. Whatever it is, any negative thought you think. And it could be just a repetition of the nasty things an alcoholic and abusive parent said. It could be a bad phrase that someone said to you when you were vulnerable in grade school. And it just stuck. It just landed on you, and you just kept playing that story over and over and over again. Then every time there's more evidence, R2 just brings it up and says, here's another example to prove why that was true. So at some point, Paul, we all have to awaken and realize, wait, I am profoundly, abundantly resourced. I am capable. I've accomplished a lot of things. I've learned all kinds of stuff. I can use my time more wisely to get where I want to go. And once you start realizing even the slightest little foothold, then that becomes a platform for the next leveling up. And that's what we're talking about, leveling up in the brain, leveling up in your attitudes, your mindset, leveling up in your capacities, in your capabilities.
Yeah, I think what's important, I think as people begin to apply the principles of certainly autosuggestion, because he says in the book, whatever you plant into the subconscious mind, this part of you is deductive. It has no ability to reject an idea. It not only accepts the idea as truth, it accepts the idea as your truth, right? And any idea, thought, or vibrational frequency concept that you impregnate into the subconscious mind, your subconscious mind, Maxwell Maltz, basically his work of psycho-cybernetics is exactly what you said at the start, is that he was saying that the subconscious mind is the servo mechanism. It takes whatever you tell it as not only the gospel truth, but as a directive to go and create more of that and prove that right. It's like the genie in the bottle that says, as you wish. And I think for entrepreneurs who lack the understanding of the subconscious mind, we fail to recognize that all we do is create. We're constantly receiving and constantly sending. All we do is generate our future and attract to us things that are in harmony with the dominant thought that we have. And if we fail to recognize that in our own self-talk, when we say, well, nobody's going to buy this program, nobody's going to listen to me, I'm not qualified. When we speak that, we're giving life to that. Life and death begins in the tongue, and it's because the way this subconscious mind works is it's deductive. Yeah. It just accepts it as truth. Our conscious mind, we can evaluate, right? We can say, yes or no, do I like this, right or wrong? Is this the best for me? And we can evaluate, and that's where our free will lies. Our subconscious mind, Not so much. That's it. What's in is in. And until it never goes away, does it, Paul? I mean, speak to this idea that the negative idea or concept never goes away, but we can transmute that energy, right? We can decrease its amplitude of vibration. Explain that process.
Okay, this is an interesting and really important distinction to make, Paul, because if everything that we ever experience is recorded, and much of it is recorded out of consciousness for us, and if we have a negative thought toward ourselves or our goals, and in a tenth of a second, mind drops in and searches this 11 miles of resources and say, wait, I'm finding all kinds of examples to support. You're not going to be able to do this. Then is that ever going to change? It's very important to realize that most of what self-development is, most of what self-improvement is recognizing these little pockets of disconnect, what I call this disorienting dilemma, where I'm looking at this goal and I'm choosing it, but for some reason, day after day, month after month, year after year, I am not getting to it. What's going on? And when we start realizing where the disconnect are, and there's really only three, there's three disconnects. And what happens is when they happen, we don't want to let anybody know. And we kind of tell ourselves a lie about it. And we divert our attention from it. Well, the truth is we've got to bring it into the light and say, you know what? The statement is a mistaken inference. This is a faulty conclusion about an event that happened to me when I was 5 years old. It's no longer relevant. Paul, I believe I was no good at public speaking, and I went to Toastmasters and I fainted in my icebreaker speech.
I love that story.
And then I had to get up in front of a group of 400 doctors of optometry for the North Central States Optometric Association. And a part of me was a 5-year-old wanting to cry and run out of the room. I said, wow, that's got to change, right? And so what I had to do, my self-development work, was revealing to myself, you don't have to do psychotherapy. You just have to say, where am I headed? And if anything counter to that shows up, that's where creative imagination comes in. And this is what Napoleon Hill is trying to help us to use. Use your creative imagination. And the work that I encountered a couple of decades ago also said, it's not so much about getting behind ourselves and pushing us towards our goal, but actually contacting that future and asking it, hey, what do I have to do today that's going to help me realize that? And that's why the subconscious is so important. We set a goal consciously, but the inner mind, the subconscious, finds the best ways and means to get there. Why? Because it's connected to the infinite intelligence. And that infinite intelligence communicates to us through the creative imagination. We get an inspired thought. We act on it. And I've watched you, Paul. I've watched you conduct meetings, and I've seen the downloads happen right on the spot. It's like you defocus momentarily and boom, it lands in you, and you bring it out, and everybody now starts running in all kinds of directions to make these shifts. And it's so successful for you, Paul. And what if out of 100 great ideas, 80 of them are fabulous? Great. If 20 of them are fabulous and 80 of them are no good, you start to realize which one, discerning, that was a good idea, it landed on me. But these 20%, these are the ones that should take our focus. And by working with your creative imagination, paying attention to the downloads that come in, then what happens is when those disorienting dilemmas begin to disconnect us, we can step in and say, right there's where I'm giving away my power. What's going on? I know I'm powerful. What's going on here? I want to move in this direction. That's when the upload comes, that infinite intelligence comes in and says, right here, this is the place you need to make the shift.
One of the things, thank you, and for all of you who are watching, now you see why, in the chapter on organized planning, when I teach it, next week. I'm not teaching it this week because I had a plan to teach it this week. And then an opportunity to have Paul Scheele come in, and the schedule wouldn't have worked in the time frame for when it would have naturally fallen into this book. I don't fall in love with the plan. I fall in love with the outcome. And so I changed the plan. And, you know, my whole team was like, hold it. You can't put Paul Scheele in here now. We've got organized planning as the next. No. And one of the questions that you have helped me, and so I'm going to kind of make some statements. I'm going to ask a question. Is, you know, when I've been, because you have coached me through lots of business decisions, lots of business challenges, failures and successes. You know, I will come to you and I'll say, you know, I'll make a declaration. And you'll ask me, you know, does believing that serve you, right? Does believing that serve you? And if it doesn't serve you, what would be a belief that would? And can we find a foothold into a belief that would? And that has saved me from sabotaging myself and my success and my team and everything else. So I want to cover intuition and the sixth sense, but I want to just push that to the side for now. And I want to talk about this idea of sabotaging, and specifically your program about it, because I think it's important, and this is the right, because when somebody doesn't understand what we've been talking about for the last 41 minutes now, it can really feel like when someone has this future state, I want that. And there's something that's getting in the way. This disorienting dilemma is getting this competing commitment. We can move to self-judgment. I'm lazy. I'm not disciplined. I'm not hardworking. I'll never amount to anything. And these things sabotage us. Speak to why you created this program on sabotage and why it's so important that we understand this as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I have to say, my focus has always been on revealing the true genius that's within everyone. And I create programs that I know are going to make a huge difference in their lives. And when those programs end up on a shelf and never get listened to, I say, something's going on here. What's the deal? I did my second book was on looking at what is that all about? And I realized that what happens is we step back from the threshold of our greatness out of a sense that we're not worthy, which is kind of a fear in our head. We won't belong. If I do this and fail, people are going to kick me to the curb. So it's a fear of the heart. And then there's that I won't be safe. And that's a fear of the gut. And what it is these are all beliefs in a fundamental set of insufficiencies that we naturally experience growing up. Look, we're incapable of feeding ourselves, of speaking, of walking. When we're born into the world, we're utterly helpless. But as kind of a post-traumatic stress disorder, years later, when we go to doubt, when we try to manage that anxiety, when we feel that gut level fear, we just bail. We just get out of there, fight, flight, or freeze, right? Now, some of us in the fight realize our real power. For example, somebody says, you're never going to amount to anything. And you say, oh yeah, you want to bet? Watch me. And that's called the polarity response, right? That's a self-reference that I'm going to prove you all wrong about this. Well, that's a nice trait, but there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of rage in there. And eventually that takes its toll as well.
Yeah.
When we are formulating our own path forward, we're going to recognize in little things around us that we're engaging in those self-sabotaging behaviors. For example, you buy a program and you make all kinds of promises to yourself. You don't do anything about it. Or you create a to-do list and you don't even look at it all day long. And at the end of the day, you look at it and go, oh, I didn't do anything, right? Or you have a task, you have an appointment to do something, you don't show up. We'll show up for a doctor's appointment, but we don't show up for ourselves. What's going on? And so these little disconnects that happen are indicative of these fears And it's a fear response, like a post-traumatic stress disorder. And so what happens, instead of admitting, yeah, I was afraid, I didn't think I was worthy, I didn't think people would believe in me if I did this, I didn't think I'd have the resources necessary. And so as a result, I tell myself little lies like, I didn't have time, or I'll get to that later. Bull. If it's important to you, it doesn't have to be urgent, but if it's important to you, you're going to get to it today. So it's about this congruence and a coherence with your goals that allows you to step up, recognize that 10th of a second hesitation that's pulling you back from the threshold of your possibilities, and standing in it and realizing, no, that's a faulty conclusion from when I was a kid. I can do this. I can do this. I'm up for this. And this is biblical when Moses, he sees the burning bush and, he hears Moshe, and he goes, wait a minute, you got the wrong guy here. No, I just murdered my brother, my half brother in Egypt. I'm running away. I got a stuttering problem. I can't lead the people out. This is the ideas that will discount. And we have to understand we only get the qualifications by starting the process and realizing our capacity. If we stop at the threshold and back off and keep living our lives of quiet desperation, we don't get to realize that we could have done it. The only time we realize we could do it is when we face that fear, do a small next step. And this is what one of the graduates of the program said, Paul. She said, this is Sandra K. Reynolds. She said, I always set these massive goals for myself, and I look at them and I feel immediately overwhelmed and insufficient. She said, it's not about making a massive step forward. Yes, set massive goals, but it's a next small step right here, right now. That's what makes a difference. And so, Paul, it's being able to stand in that crucible of our fears, our worries, our anxieties, and realize that our creative imagination and the infinite intelligence and the power of our subconscious mind are all here to serve us in fulfilling our purpose in life. And I do want to also, unless we have another question, but I do want to talk about Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone and Jack Canfield, because this also fits in with this idea of resonance. But do you get why I built this program, The 3 Dirty Secrets? Because we keep telling ourselves these lies. And as long as we're telling, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, somebody else is better qualified, whatever it might be. When we tell ourselves a lie, we are denying the real power and potential that's within us.
How's the program delivered, Paul? When somebody enrolls in the program, is this a self-study program? Is it evergreen? Is it live? How do you bring the program?
Well, the program coming up very shortly is a live program. I invite everybody, look at 3dirtysecrets.com right now, sign up. If you can make it to the live sessions, great. If you already know you have some things that you can't make it, it's okay. It's going to be recorded in your membership site that same afternoon. It's super simple because so many solutions are so complicated, Paul. What we want to do is we want to just take 20 minutes 3 times a week. So 20 minutes, you meet with me live on a Zoom call. And what we're going to do is we're going to move the needle forward over a period of a month. And maximum loss in 30 days, right? It's very important that we stick with it. And so it's these 3 times a week. And on the Friday session, I open up to Q&A as well. So it's a live interaction, very powerful. This will go evergreen right after this next run of the program. It's starting this month. It's starting in 2 days. So if you can make it, please look into it, 3dirtysecrets.com. People who have taken it are raving about it. And I'm telling you, I designed it, Paul, for your community. You know that. You asked me, what could I do? And I said, let's do this. I am so thrilled with the results, so thrilled with the simplicity of it and the reveal to ourselves of just how capable we are and all those things we've been discounting ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a word that I'm trying to do with the Empower Living community right now, it's really focusing on strategy, helping people be much more strategic.
Yeah.
And of course, being strategic requires an understanding of things, and also requires a disciplined practice. And so this is something that anybody can do. 3 times a week for 20 minutes, you can find that standing on your head. And I, as a participant of probably every program you've ever done, I can tell you that, anybody who goes through this is going to walk out with a much higher level of awareness, a much better understanding of who they are and the resources within them and how to connect those to how to connect with those. Let's just
those resources are accessible. And the other thing that's important, Paul, is I've put into this program my paraliminal technology so that we're really driving it to the subconscious mind. We're making sure that these choices you're making each week are reinforced and embodied, because that embodied awareness is the difference that makes a difference. It's one thing to have an awareness. Right. It's nice. Oh yeah, I understand. Oh yeah, I know about that. But to have an embodied awareness means that you're living it today. And living it is actually much easier than not living it, which is the whole point of Napoleon Hill's book, right? We have to live it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm doing. And you've helped me create the curriculum that I'm doing for my mastermind groups. It's all about praxis, the integration of thought and behavior and what we do. So in the remaining time we have, we just had a couple of minutes. Let's just talk about the sixth sense. And I know that I couldn't say anything more unfair than that sentence right there. In a few minutes, let's talk about the sixth sense. But let's talk about the sixth sense. Share, as it relates to, for an entrepreneur, for me, trust, first off, me knowing that voice, for me, it's a feeling tone, trusting that voice. It is how I live my life. I am much more driven by my intuition than by data or statistics or anything like that. Share with us as an entrepreneur why it's so important for us to develop this sixth sense, and it can be developed.
Yeah, absolutely, it can be developed. This is one of my first introductions to the real power of the mind. And, the Department of Defense did studies on technical remote viewing. You've taken my session on being able to see, feel, and hear things at a distance. We all have this natural capacity, but it's marginalized, it's discounted by most of our upbringings. We do not encounter it or use it, and most people poo-poo it, but every great business leader always trusted their intuition. And there is a great example of this. Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone worked together at the end of Napoleon Hill's life. W. Clement Stone was a successful Chicago insurance company owner, and one of his students was Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Souls. And Jack at the time was making $6,000 a year annual salary as an inner city teacher in the school system. And Jack said, Mr. Stone, I just can't believe this stuff. He said, look, set a goal that is so outrageous that the only rational explanation that it occurred is that these principles work. All right, set a goal. So he wrote a check to himself for $100,000 to Jack Canfield, put it on a ceiling. So he's going to look at it when? Every night before he goes to bed, and every morning when he wakes up, and he's going to see it, and he's going to practice this creative visualization. 30 days went by, not much of anything changed. 45 days went by. One day in the shower, he thought, oh, here's the idea. And it's miraculous, miraculous, miraculous after that. And it was a change. And guess how much money he made that year?
$100,000.
And $100,006. I mean, it was just almost to the exact dollar amount. So the idea is our intuition will guide us. That sixth sense will guide us because it's coming from the infinite. is coming from the infinite intelligence through our subconscious mind. And you said something very important. You said it's a feeling tone. Tone is actually a sound. Feeling is a kinesthetic vibration. And this is the key. What we're talking about now in what's called the law of attraction, and I wrote a course and teach it all over the world with Jack Canfield on what's called effortless success. It's about raising our vibrational level. And that's what Napoleon Hill talks about. He's talking about a vibrational energy. We know it today in quantum physics as the quantum field coming into expression as light and particle. And these two interacting manifest everything in the known world. And this is why it's so important as a business person to not only hold the image of your success, but stay attuned to your intuition, because it's going to guide you to the ideal next step to realize it.
Yeah. And, one of the beautiful things about this for me has been that I didn't have to understand all this to apply it. What I had to do is I had to believe in Patrick, who was teaching me in the beginning. And I had to have faith and trust, and I had to have a willingness. And he says in the book that until you're ready to truly receive the idea, and being ready to receive means that you're willing to, like, when the idea comes, you've already made an agreement with yourself that you're gonna play full out and bring it out. And I love what you've done with the 3dirtysecrets.com program. Is you've put kind of the cookies on the bottom shelf. You don't have to have you don't have to have all of the understanding of quantum physics and neuroscience in order to make this useful and be able to apply it into your life. And I think that's what makes the big difference. Is it's small consistent steps. The compounding effect of consistency really pays off.
I think you've really hit it spot on. And understand, Paul, that some of us are motivated away from the pain and suffering of not getting what we want. And some of us are motivated toward the possibility of that bright future and reward that we're going for. And it's okay if you're motivated in either way. If you're unconsciously motivated away from, perfect. We're going to get you moving in the right direction to what it is that you want. You're going to be able to let go of the pain and the frustration and the suffering that's kept you in what I call a stuck state for all these years, month after month, year after year, having a goal and not realizing it. We're also going to be able to work with you if you already know your goal, if you already have your business plan, if you're already organizing yourself and moving in that direction, how in a split second you can take a next step, a small next step, and see concrete evidence of success. And this is also talked about in Think and Grow Rich, is we have to be able to have the small concrete indicators of success that are reinforcing us along the way, because success is the progressive realization of that worthy ideal that you have set as your North Star to guide your behaviors in business to get where you want to go. So as you are making progress, see it. And if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, great. It's building strength and it's building flexibility. Don't feel remorse or regret for a backward step. You just got stronger, right? And that's what's going to lead you forward to making the next really important decision of your life, because it's coming. It's coming. It's coming very soon. You have to prepare yourself. You've heard the statement, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity, right? Yep. And so we're preparing ourselves. Think and Grow Rich is preparing the field, the fertile field of the mind, to be able to capitalize, manifest in monetarily realized as well as other rewarding ways that are important to you. And he makes a point. It's not just about money, but money is a really good metric for the degree to which you're living and playing full out.
Yeah, it's a great measuring tool, right? You can measure it to the penny, and it's something that we can all identify with. Well, Paul, thank you so much. I want to just again encourage all of you, click on the link below in the comments, check out Dr. Paul Scheele's program. You're going to absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Paul. God bless.
Blessings.
Well, everybody, bye-bye.